My daughter got $33 million and threw me out. 3 days later, she was begging for my help. I was folding towels in the laundry room when my phone buzzed. That was the thing about my life back then. Everything ordinary, everything small. I had 3 laundry baskets lined up by color because that was the kind of woman I was. The kind who sorted whites from darks even when nobody was watching. The kind who ironed her husband's dress shirts on Sunday nights for 42 years. The kind who thought if you did everything right, you would be safe. The buzzer was a text from my daughter Claire. She said, "Coming over at 4. That was it. No smiley face, no love you mom, just the facts. Claire had been sending messages like that for a while, but I told myself she was busy. She had 3 kids, she had a big house in Ridgefield, she had a husband who sold medical devices and made more money than I ever understood. So I didn't push. I folded a yellow towel and then a blue one, and then I went to the kitchen to start a pot of coffee because Claire always drank coffee when she came over. I looked around my kitchen and I thought about how small it was. The counters were Formica from 1998. The refrigerator had a dent in the door from when my grandson Liam swung a baseball bat in the house 2 summers ago. I left the dent there because I thought it was funny. I thought it was a memory. I thought everything broken could be turned into something sweet if you just loved hard enough. Claire walked in at 4:15. She had her work face on, that tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was wearing a black blazer and heels, and she looked like a woman who had meetings about things I would never understand. She sat down at my kitchen table and she didn't hug me. She didn't ask how I was feeling. My hip had been hurting for weeks. I had mentioned it to her twice. She didn't ask. She said, "Mom, we need to talk about the house." I said, "What about the house?" She said, "You know how Dad left everything to me in the trust." I said, "Your father left the house to both of us." That was the conversation we had after his funeral. You and me and the lawyer. You said I could live here as long as I wanted. You said that was what Dad wanted. She looked at her hands. She had my mother's hands. Long fingers, pale skin. A little tremor when she was nervous. I had not seen that tremor in years. It came back right then in my kitchen. She said, "I need you to understand that things have changed. The trust was written a certain way. I have control over the property now, and I've decided to sell." I laughed. I actually laughed because I thought it was a joke. Claire had a dark sense of humor sometimes. She got it from her father. I thought any second she would crack a smile and say, "Just kidding, Mom," and then we would drink our coffee and she would tell me about Liam's soccer game. She did not crack a smile. She pulled a document out of her bag. A thick stack of papers with a blue cover sheet. She slid it across the table like she was a banker and I was a stranger. She said, "I've already listed the house. The realtor thinks we can get 400,000, maybe more with the market right now. I can help you find an apartment, something small, something more manageable for you." My hands started shaking. I put the coffee pot down. I said, "Claire, I have lived in this house for 34 years. I raised you in this house. Your father died in the bedroom upstairs. The garden in the backyard was your grandmother's garden before she passed. You cannot sell this house." She said, "I can, and I am." That was the moment. That was the crack in the foundation. Not a loud crack, not an explosion. Just a quiet sound deep down that told me everything I had built was made of nothing. I asked her why. I asked her what she needed so badly that she would throw me out of my own home. I asked her if she was in trouble, if Mark lost his job, if there was a gambling thing or a drug thing, or anything I could help with. I was already trying to save her. Even as she was killing me, I was trying to save her. She said, "I'm not in trouble, Mom. I'm fine. I just want the money." I said, "What money?" She said, "The house is worth money, and I want it." I looked at her for a long time. I tried to find the little girl who used to crawl into my bed after a nightmare.
The teenager who cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke up with her at the homecoming dance. The young mother who called me at 3 a.m. because the baby wouldn't stop crying and she didn't know what to do. I tried to find her in that woman sitting at my kitchen table with the document and the blazer and the cold eyes. She was not there. I said, "You are going to have to evict me." She said, "I already started the process. You'll get the papers next week. I'm giving you 60 days. I want to tell you that I screamed. I want to tell you that I threw something, that I grabbed her by the shoulders and shook her and demanded to know what happened to my daughter. But I did not do any of those things. I sat down in the chair across from her, and I folded my hands on the table, and I said, okay. I said okay because I did not know what else to say, because my voice had left me, because the woman sitting across from me was not my daughter. She was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Claire left at 4:45. She took the document with her. She did not drink the coffee. She did not say goodbye. She just walked out the front door and left it open a crack, and the cold November air came rushing in, and I sat there for an hour feeling it. That night, I called my son Michael. Michael lives in Oregon. He is 8 years older than Claire. He has a quiet life with his wife Jenna and their 2 boys. He calls me every Sunday. He sends flowers on my birthday.
He is not close to Claire. They have not been close since they were children. I always thought that was my fault. I thought I did not do enough to keep them together. But that night, I understood that Claire had been building walls for a long time, and I just refused to see them. Michael answered on the second ring. He said, "Hey, Mom, what's wrong?" He always knew. Even from 3,000 miles away, he knew when my voice was off. I told him about the house. I told him about the document and the 60 days and the cold look in his sister's eyes. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I knew she would do something like this eventually." I said, "What do you mean you knew?" He said, "Mom, you remember the trust? You remember what Dad did?" I said, "Your father left the house to me. That was the agreement." Michael said, "No, Mom. Dad left the house to Claire. He put it in her name when she turned 35. That was 2 years ago. You signed the papers. You were in the room with the lawyer." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not a rib, something deeper. Something that had been holding me together for 68 years. I said, "Michael, I never signed anything." He said, "Mom, you did. I was there. You signed over the house to Claire. Dad said it was for tax purposes. He said it would protect the asset. You trusted him. You always trusted him." I hung up the phone. I walked to the bedroom. I opened the drawer where I kept the important things, the birth certificates, the marriage license. The deed to the house. The deed was not there. The deed had not been there for 2 years. I just never looked. I never checked. Because why would I check? Because my husband loved me. Because my daughter loved me. Because the people you give everything to do not take everything from you. But they do. That is the thing I learned. They absolutely do. I spent the next 3 days in a fog. I did not eat. I did not sleep. I sat on my couch and stared at the walls and tried to understand how my life had become this. My husband Richard had been dead for 14 months. He died of pancreatic cancer. I held his hand when he took his last breath. I kissed his forehead. I told him it was okay to go. I thought we had a good marriage. I thought we were a team. I thought he loved me the way I loved him. But he had been planning this. He had been planning to leave me with nothing. He set up the trust so Claire would control everything. He gave her the house. He gave her the life insurance. He gave her the retirement accounts. He left me with a checking account that had $12,000 and a car that was paid off and a Social Security check that barely covered groceries. I found out the full truth on the 3rd day. I called the lawyer who handled Richard's estate, a woman named Helen Klein who had an office in Danbury. I drove there myself. I parked in the garage and walked through the cold wind and sat in her waiting room with my hands in my coat pockets. Helen came out after 10 minutes. She looked surprised to see me. She looked nervous. She brought me into her office and closed the door. She said, "Mary, I am so sorry you had to find out this way." I said, "Tell me everything." She said, "Richard came to me 3 years ago. He said he wanted to restructure the estate. He said he wanted to make sure the assets stayed in the family. He was worried about nursing homes. He was worried about medical bills. He said he wanted to protect what he built." I said, "Protect it from who?" Helen looked at her desk. She looked at a framed photo of her kids. She looked at a paperweight that said, "Trust but verify." Then she looked at me. She said, "From you, Mary. He wanted to protect it from you." I did not cry. I wanted to cry, but my body would not let me. My body had turned to cement. I was sitting in that chair, and I was hardening from the inside out. Helen said, "He was worried that if you remarried or if you needed long-term care, the assets would get eaten up. He wanted Claire to have control. He said Claire would take care of you. He said that was the deal." I said, "The deal?" She said, "Claire would manage the money. She would make sure you had what you needed. She would let you stay in the house. That was the arrangement." I said, Claire is selling the house. She is evicting me in 60 days. Helen's face changed. She looked down at her hands. She said, I heard something about that. I didn't want to believe it. I said, you heard something. From who?
She said Claire called me last month. She asked about the process for liquidating the trust. She said she needed the cash for something. I told her she had the legal right, but I advised her to talk to you first. She said she would. I assumed she did. I stood up. I do not remember standing up. I just remember being on my feet and looking down at Helen Klein and feeling something hot behind my eyes. Not tears, rage, pure, clean rage. I said, what about the money from my mother, the inheritance she left me, $40,000? I put that in a joint account with Richard. What happened to that? Helen went pale. She said, Mary, I think you should sit down. I said, I am not sitting down. Tell me what happened to my mother's money. Helen said, Richard used it to pay off the mortgage on the house 3 years ago. He said it was an investment in the property. He said it would increase your equity. I said, but I have no equity. The house belongs to Claire. Helen nodded. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. I walked out of that office. I walked through the parking garage. I got in my car, and I sat there for 45 minutes. The windshield fogged up. My breath was the only warm thing in the world. I thought about my mother. I thought about how she saved that money her whole life. She worked as a secretary at a high school. She put away $20 a week for 30 years. She gave it to me on her deathbed. She said, this is for you, Mary. This is for your future.
Do not let anyone take it. I let someone take it. I let my husband take it. I let my daughter take it. I handed them everything, and they opened their hands and let it fall through their fingers like sand. I drove home. I made a cup of tea. I sat in my living room and I looked at the photographs on the wall. Claire's wedding, Michael's graduation, Liam as a baby. All those moments, all that love. I wondered if any of it was real. I wondered if Claire had ever loved me, or if she had just been waiting for her father to die, waiting for the money to come, waiting for the moment she could finally stop pretending. That night, my phone rang at 11 o'clock. It was Claire. I almost did not answer, but I did, because I am a mother, and mothers answer the phone. She was crying. I had not heard Claire cry since she was 17 years old and her boyfriend cheated on her at a party. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. She said, Mom, please, I need you. I need you to come to the hospital. I said, what happened? She said, Liam, he was riding his bike. He got hit by a car. He is in surgery. They do not know if he is going to make it. Mom, please come. I hung up the phone. I stood in my kitchen. The tea was cold. The house was dark. My grandson Liam was in a hospital bed with tubes in his body, and my daughter was begging me to come. The same daughter who had served me eviction papers. The same daughter who had stolen my house. The same daughter who had looked me in the eyes and told me she wanted my money. I got my keys. I got my coat. I drove to the hospital. The drive took 30 minutes. I spent the whole time thinking about Liam. He was 10 years old. He had my husband's blue eyes. He loved macaroni and cheese and video games and his grandmother's chocolate chip cookies. I made him cookies every time he came over. He would eat 6 in a row and then ask for more. I never said no. I never said no to any of them. I parked the car. I walked into the emergency room. The lights were too bright. The smell was too clean. I found Claire in the waiting room. She was sitting in a plastic chair with her head in her hands. Mark was next to her. He was not touching her. They looked like two strangers who had been placed next to each other by accident. Claire looked up when she saw me. Her face was swollen from crying. Her mascara was everywhere. She stood up and she hugged me. She hugged me like she was 5 years old again, like I was the only safe place in the world. And I hugged her back, because I am a mother, because no matter what she did, I could not stop my arms from holding her. She said, "Thank you for coming. I thought you would not come." I said, "I almost did not." She looked at me. She understood what I meant. For 1 second, there was something real between us, something raw, something that was not about money or houses or betrayal. It was just a mother and a daughter in a terrible moment.
And then it was gone, because Claire looked away. Because Claire has been looking away from me for years, and I just never noticed. We sat in the waiting room for 4 hours. A surgeon came out at 3 in the morning. He said Liam was stable. He said the surgery went well. He said there was damage to his spleen and a broken leg and some internal bleeding, but he was young and strong and he would recover. Claire collapsed into Mark's arms. Mark held her. That was the first time I saw him touch her all night. I went home at 4 in the morning. I drove through empty streets. The sky was starting to lighten in the east. I thought about Liam. I thought about Claire. I thought about Richard. I thought about the house. I thought about the $40,000 my mother saved for 20 years. I thought about all of it. And I felt nothing. That was the worst part. I felt absolutely nothing. The next day, Claire came to my house. She did not call first. She just showed up. She looked terrible. She had not slept. Her hair was a mess. She was wearing sweatpants and an old sweatshirt that said Ridgefield Mom. She looked like my daughter again. Not the woman in the blazer. Just Claire. Just my girl. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where she had served me papers 3 days ago. She looked at me and she started crying. She said, "I am so sorry, Mom. I am so, so sorry." I did not say anything. I just looked at her. She said, "The money is gone. The $33 million.
It is all gone. I said, what? $33 million? She looked at me like I was supposed to know, like everyone in the world knew except for me. She said, Dad's trust. It was not just the house. It was everything. The stocks, the real estate, the inheritance from his parents, the life insurance. It was $33 million. And I lost it. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. I grabbed the edge of the table. I said, "You lost $33 million in 3 days?" She said, "Not in 3 days, in 6 months. I have been moving the money for 6 months. I took it out of the trust and I invested it in this thing, this crypto thing. Mark's brother told us about it. He said it was guaranteed. He said we would double our money in a year. But it crashed. It all crashed. And I tried to stop it, but I could not. And now it is gone. Every single dollar." I sat down. I sat down because my legs would not hold me anymore. I looked at my daughter, my beautiful daughter, the one I breastfed and rocked to sleep and drove to piano lessons and helped with homework and paid for college and cried over when she got married. She had taken everything, not just from me, from everyone, from her father's legacy, from her brother, from her own children. She had taken $33 million and she had thrown it into a fire. I said, "What about the house?" She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You told me you were selling the house for $400,000. That was a lie."
You were selling the house because you needed cash, because you lost everything else. She nodded. She could not look at me. I said, "How much do you owe?" She said, "Everything. The credit cards, the margin loans, the private lenders. We owe almost $12 million. They are going to take the house. They are going to take everything. Mom, I do not know what to do." I looked at her. I looked at my daughter who had everything and lost everything, who had taken from me and lost that too, who had destroyed her own family in search of more. And I felt something I did not expect. I felt pity. Not forgiveness, not love. Just cold, hard pity for a woman who had been given the world and had thrown it away because the world was not enough. I said, "Why are you telling me this?" She said, "Because you are the only one who can help." I laughed. I laughed so hard I almost choked. I said, "Claire, I have $12,000 in my checking account. I drive a car that is 13 years old. I am 68 years old, and I was supposed to retire in this house, but you took that from me. I have nothing. You made sure I had nothing." She said, "Mom, you have the original trust, the one from Grandma, the one Dad used to pay off the mortgage. That trust had a clause that said if the assets were mismanaged, you could reclaim them. Helen told me. She said there is a chance you could get the house back, you could get some of the money back, but you have to sue me. You have to take me to court." I said, "You want me to sue you?" She said, "I want you to save us." I stood up.
I walked to the window. I looked at my backyard, the garden my mother planted, the oak tree where Michael used to climb, the patch of grass where Claire learned to ride a bike. All of it was about to disappear. And the only person who could stop it was me, the woman they had tried to throw away. I turned around. I looked at my daughter. She was crying, real tears. Not the tears of a woman who was sorry, the tears of a woman who was afraid. There is a difference. I knew it now. I had learned it the hard way. I said, I will think about it. She said, Mom, please, please do not leave me like this. I said, you left me. You left me at this kitchen table 3 days ago. You walked out that door and you did not look back. So do not ask me not to leave you. You already left yourself. You left yourself the moment you decided that money was more important than your mother, than your father's memory, than your own soul. She left after that. She walked out the same door she had walked out 3 days ago. But this time she left it open. I think she wanted me to call her back. I did not call her back. I let the cold air come in. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, and I let the cold air hit my face, and I thought about what I was going to do. I called Michael that night. I told him everything. The 33 million, the crypto, the clause in my mother's trust, the house, the 12 million in debt.
He listened. He did not say much. He just breathed into the phone and let me talk. When I finished, he said one thing. He said, Mom, do not let her do this to you again. I said, what do you mean? He said, she is not asking for your help. She is asking for your money. She always has been. She learned it from Dad. They both saw you as a resource, not a person. A resource. And now that the resource is almost empty, they are trying to squeeze the last drop out of you. I said, Michael, she is your sister. He said, I know, and I love her, but I cannot watch her destroy you. I cannot watch you give her the only thing you have left, your dignity. I hung up the phone. I sat in the dark. I thought about my mother. I thought about her hands, the way they looked when she was sewing, the way they looked when she was holding me. I thought about the $40,000, how hard she worked for it, how much she sacrificed, how she trusted me to protect it. I failed her. I let Richard take it. I let Claire take it. I failed my mother, and I failed myself. But maybe I could stop failing. Maybe I could stand up right now, at 68 years old, and say no, no more. No more giving, no more sacrificing, no more pretending that love means letting people take everything from you until there is nothing left but bones. The next morning, I called Helen Klein. I told her to start the lawsuit. I told her to go after the house, to go after the trust, to go after every dollar that had my mother's name on it. Helen said it would take months, it would take years, it might not work. I said I do not care. I said I have nothing left to lose except my self-respect, and I am not losing that. Claire called me 7 times that day. I did not answer. She left voicemails, crying, begging, saying I was destroying the family, saying I was worse than she ever was, saying she wished I had died instead of her father. I listened to every single voicemail. I saved them on my phone. I listened to them when I felt weak. They made me strong. I moved out of the house 3 weeks later. I could not stay there. Every room was full of ghosts. Richard in his armchair, Claire at the piano, Michael doing homework at the dining room table, my mother in the garden. All those ghosts, all that love, all that loss. I packed my clothes and my photographs and my mother's sewing machine, and I drove to a small apartment complex on the other side of town. The apartment is small, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen so tiny you cannot open the oven and the refrigerator at the same time. The walls are beige, the carpet is brown. The windows face a parking lot. It is not my home, but it is mine. I pay the rent with my Social Security check. I buy my own groceries. I sleep in my own bed. I am alone, and I am not alone. I am with myself. For the first time in 68 years, I am with myself. Michael came to visit last month. He brought Jenna and the boys.
We sat in my tiny living room and ate takeout pizza off paper plates. The boys played on the floor with Legos. Jenna helped me wash dishes. Michael sat in the one armchair and looked at me with his father's eyes. He said, "I am proud of you, Mom." I said, "I am proud of me too." And I meant it. Claire has not spoken to me in 8 months. She sent me a letter last week, 3 pages, handwritten. She told me she was sorry. She told me she was in therapy. She told me Mark left her and took the kids. She told me she was living in a studio apartment in Bridgeport. She told me she had nothing left. She asked me to forgive her. She asked me to call her. I put the letter in a drawer. I did not call her. I am not ready. Maybe I will never be ready. Maybe forgiveness is not something you can force. Maybe it comes slowly, like grass through concrete. Or maybe it never comes. Maybe some wounds are too deep. Maybe some betrayals are too complete. I am 70 years old now. I have a grandson who almost died, a daughter who lost everything, a son who loves me, a house that belongs to a bank, a mother who is watching from somewhere. I have a small apartment and a beige carpet, and a window that faces a parking lot. I have my memories. I have my mistakes. I have my regret. But I also have my no. I have the word I finally learned to say. It took me 68 years to learn it. I learned it in a kitchen, with a cold pot of coffee, and a document with a blue cover sheet. I learned it from a daughter who thought I was nothing. I learned it from a husband who thought I was a liability. I learned it from a mother who died hoping I would be stronger than she was. I am not strong. I am just tired. And being tired is enough. Being tired means you stop running. You stop chasing. You stop giving pieces of yourself to people who only want the whole thing. You sit down. You rest. You let the phone ring. You let the letters sit in the drawer. You drink your coffee alone. And you watch the sun come up over the parking lot. And you tell yourself that this is enough. This small life. This quiet room. This beating heart that nobody can take from you because you stopped giving it away. My phone is ringing right now. It is Claire. It is always Claire. She calls every Sunday at 7 o'clock. I watch the phone light up on the counter. I watch her name appear on the screen. I let it ring. I let it go to voicemail. Maybe next Sunday I will answer. Maybe I will not. That is the only power I have left. The power to choose. And I am keeping it. For now, for as long as I can, I am keeping it.